Let's get to know our first guest, Sharmain Matlock Turner, President and CEO of Urban Affairs Coalition. Sharmain, what is the Urban Affairs Coalition?
The Urban Affairs Coalition is a 50-year-old organization that is a home for nonprofits. We work with groups and organizations that really want to drive change in their communities by creating great partnerships with government, community, business, and individuals.
Mm-hmm. This organization grew out of something that happened a number of years ago. What was that?
Yes, this organization grew out of the tragic assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. People in Philadelphia came together to say, we do believe that we can learn from this experience and create a space that is more equitable and that really listens to the needs of everyone in our communities.
Where you're from originally, and how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
I'm originally from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I am the oldest of four.
So what was the effect of you growing up the oldest of four kids?
I could tell everybody else what to do.
So you naturally took charge, huh?
I naturally took charge. It was always fun to explore and to find other things to do.
Tell us about what was going on when you were about 10 years old, when you were hanging out with your grandparents in the mountains.
Well, I was hanging out with my grandparents in the mountains, and there was a store that was nearby, and I just figured that there was a way for us to cross the mountain to get to that store to buy the candy that we really wanted.
With who?
With my sister and with some other friends who also lived near the mountain. I said, come on, let's go.
You were
bring
10
your
years
money.
old, and how young were they?
They were about somewhere between 10 and 12 as well.
So you took these kids on a trek across the mountain, and you didn't know what was on the other side.
I had no idea. Someone said, well, what if they're bears,
Yeah,
or
it
what
could
if
be
they're
bears.
snakes? I said, well, we'll deal with
So
it.
you have this ability to take some risks, don't you? You have some guts and courage in you. Denise, where do you want to go with that?
Well, I wanted to ask a little bit about, I know that you also grew up in Philadelphia some of the time. So tell us a little bit about the difference between your time in Philadelphia and your time in Charlottesville.
Well, my time in Philadelphia, I was in West Philadelphia. It was a terrific neighborhood, wonderful people I got a chance to meet. If you knew how to jump rope, you could get outside and meet people and really create friends. But the community seemed small.
Okay, and how was that different from Charlottesville?
Charlottesville, it was huge. I mean, I could walk across mountains. I could walk miles and miles. Everything just seems so much bigger.
Wasn't there an issue with segregation or something with race that was going on in Philadelphia versus...
Yes, well, certainly, segregation was going on in both Charlottesville and in Philadelphia. But in Virginia, especially in the community where we were, it was a lot more stark because it was absolutely... you could see it. You couldn't go places. You couldn't.
Sharmain, you told us a story about going to Woolworths for the first time, and there was some segregation going on there. Can you tell our listening audience about that?
Yes, I mean there was a Woolworths in Philadelphia at 52nd and Market Street where I could sit and have a soda. In Charlottesville, I could only go into the store to buy something. I was not allowed to sit at the counter.
When you think back on that time today, how does that impact you? What do you remember, and what do you think?
Well, it reminds me how important it is for us to continue to work on issues of race relations and to really build community that includes everybody.
And just going back to your grandparents, I know they were very impactful in your life. Can you tell us a little about your grandmom?
My grandmom was absolutely terrific. She was one of the lucky women who didn't have to work outside the home, and she had a lot of pride. We would go to that same store.
Sharmain, in the green room you said, I never let fear get in the way. What did you mean by that?
I mean that, if I was crossing the mountain or knocking on doors or trying to find my way anywhere, I might have felt somewhat fearful, but I didn't let that stop me from trying.
Matthew?
Sharmain, you've made a career of helping the world, and you're on tons of boards. You've got an amazing resume. How young were you when you realized you could change the world?
I was absolutely a teenager, and I was at church, and I was, again, joined tons of clubs. I think that's been my whole life.
And what was that most important
And
church
most important
activity?
was I got a chance to actually go out, and there was a contest to sort of raise enough money for us to have a project at church. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. Other people asked family members. I actually went out and knocked on every door in my neighborhood, and I won.
What was the what's knocking door to door when you were 10 years old and looking to raise money? What's that have to do with your role here as you're the president and CEO of the Urban Affairs Coalition? What's the parallel there?
I knock on doors every day to talk to people about the importance of contributing and really supporting the work that we do. So
Excellent.
I'm still doing that.
Alec?
You mentioned that at a young age your parents had divorced. How did that affect you growing up?
Well, certainly it was somewhat sad. And the good news was that I had a chance to spend time with my dad. He would show up at our house from time to time and just say, let's go to breakfast, let's go bowling. So he was still in my life, but it was different to be able to tell my friends I didn't have a dad
And
at
did you
home.
live with your mom?
I lived with my mom. My mom was tenacious. She worked hard. She started out as a cleaning lady. She went back to school at night and became a power machine operator.
And
taught
how
me
has
to
that
sew.
affected?
Well, what's your mom started out as a cleaning lady? What do you bring from mom to work every day as the president and CEO of the Urban Affairs Coalition? What did you learn from your mom?
A degree of humility. When I see the people in our building who are coming in for help and support, I know that that clearly was me, and that was clearly my mom. And I never forget that what we're doing has a huge impact on the future of our community.
Wow. Kayla?
Sharmain, you split your time between Charlottesville and Philadelphia, and you probably had a few different friend groups. What was your role within those friend groups?
Always to be funny, to be active, to be a leader, to really try to keep everybody together, to find fun and interesting things to do, to always be engaged.
In the green room, you mentioned organizing an activity in Charlottesville, I think a church service. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, when we were in Charlottesville at that time, the only technology we had was a little radio. So we listened to music on the radio, but other than that, we had to make our own fun. And so we were church people. And so we actually created our own little church every day. So between that and baseball, those were the games
What
we
was your
created.
role in that? What was your role in creating that little church?
The church I was an usher. We had one boy, and at the time, ministers could only be boys, so we forced him to be the minister, even though he didn't want to. And the girls ended up being the choir and the usher.
What was the common thread between your role in that group back then and what you're doing nowadays?
I think the common thread is that I really do connect with people. In the end, it is about making sure that we're helping people and connecting people and looking beyond maybe what our labels are and more into what do we care about, what do we want
knocking
to
on
do.
doors again. Who's got the next question here?
Charmaine, when you're faced with a tough decision at work, what do you hear your grandmom whispering in your ear?
Don't be afraid. Stand up for yourself. You're good enough. You can ask the right questions. Know that you can ask the right questions. You can always find the answer.
Sharmain, you're the first woman to lead the Urban Affairs Coalition. What does that mean to you?
Oh, that means an awful lot. Not only am I the first woman to lead it, but there were women who were the advocates for me to be considered as a candidate. And so I take that very seriously, and I believe that it lets other young women know that they can lead and be in charge as well.
If we were doing a good interview, what else would I be asking you about? What am I not asking you?
Well, some of the things that I really sort of keep me going is I love music. I can give you the soundtrack of my life through music, whether it was in Charlottesville or Philadelphia. I always had a song somewhere that either engaged me or inspired me to continue on and to really work hard.
What's it about music that's the same thing as running as president and CEO of the Urban Affairs Coalition?
Because you really do have to do some of the same things over and over again and be inspired by them every time. So one more meeting, one more conversation, one more ask, one more problem to solve. I look at it as soundtrack. It's like playing maybe the same song, but every time I hear a little something different, or it still inspires me in the same
What's the
way.
website address of this Urban Affairs Coalition?
We are uac.org.